Communication Coordinator with the Department of Game and Fish. We have returned to offices or a hybrid telework office environment. So, so I am stationed out of the Albuquerque office. And with that, I will push it over to Tristana, and then we'll let our formal hostess take it away.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Tristana Bickford. I am the department's communications director based out of Santa Fe. And I do want to let everybody know that we are recording tonight's session. And I will share the link here in a minute, but as soon as we can, we will get this processed and placed on the YouTube channel for the department. And bear with us, there's sometimes that it takes a lot longer than we would like, just because we don't have administrative rights to post. So we have to wait for people that do have those administrative rights to post for us, but we will get it put up there as soon as possible. So thank you all for joining us tonight, and I look forward to a great conversation. You get it from here on, Megan.
All right, my turn. Hi everybody, my name is Megan Otero. I'm the assistant coordinator for hunter education, and like Jennifer, I'm based out of our Albuquerque office. I'm currently coming to you from Rio Rancho, though, as Jennifer said, we're still kind of hybrid working, so I'm at my home office today. But I will be going through field dressing and processing. Like Jennifer said, it's a personal thing. As you start doing it, you're gonna find ways that help you, that are easier for you. Maybe you've already experienced it and someone taught you, the way that they learned. So what I show you here today does not have to be the only way, the end all of how to do it. I will primarily focus on big game field dressing, because that is the most, I think, intimidating one sometimes, especially when you decide to go, for your elk, and those are big animals. So for a lot of people, that's the one that's most nerve-wracking. But I do have some links for videos and things to show you for some of our smaller species, like turkey and things like that. So feel free to ask questions, put them in the chat, and Jennifer and Tristana will help me, and they'll probably chime in and help me as well. I am by no means an expert at any of this part. I don't think any of us ever are completely experts. I still get nervous every time I do it. Every time it's like, okay, now what? And it's like trying to remember back, because it's maybe been a year since you've done it, or maybe a couple of years. And so, don't think that what we show you here today is just gonna stick in. It's gonna take a while to remember. It even takes a while for us. So let's see, let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, I think I'm sharing. Can everybody see my screen? All right, I get a thumbs up from Jennifer. That's good. All right, so after the shot, but before the work, a lot of people would think that the hunt is gonna be the most work, and it might be, especially if you're doing something like bow or something like that, where those might be some pretty tough hunts. But really, it's after you take the shot that most of your work's really going to begin, because depending on where you took your shot at and where you're having to track the animal to, they may have decided that they're going to go down into the valley or down into the canyon away from you. So that's going to be quite a bit of a trek to make it back up to wherever you are or wherever your vehicle is. So that's why I say after the shot, but before the work. So after the shot, right, you're approaching your downed game. You always want to remember, as you approach, carefully approach it. Always approach from, if you can, from above and behind the head. That way, if they're down, they're not seeing you, and if they're still, alive, you're not spooking them, and they won't jump up and take off on you again. Stay a distance away, kind of just keep an eye on them. Are you seeing their chest rise? Are you seeing them breathing? Are they moving still? If they're not moving, that's when you really want to look for if the chest is rising and falling, because that means they're still breathing. Keep an eye on their eyes. Are they blinking? Most of the time when an animal is dead, the eyes will be open. They won't be any movement coming from them. If you want, you're still from a distance and you're not too sure, you can, toss a rock over their stick or something like that, towards the animal. They'll react to that kind of noise. What we don't want you to do is use your firearm to poke it. I know a lot of people do that. They always will walk up to it and they'll poke it with their firearm to see if it moves. We don't recommend that. And the reason for that is if it is still alive and it decides to move or it flinches, our natural human reaction is to do the same thing, right? We're going to flinch. It's going to scare us. And if you're holding your firearm loaded, the last thing you want to do is to be unsafe and accidentally, shoot again or drop the firearm or anything like that. So definitely don't recommend poking it with the firearm. If you do feel like, you need to check, find a stick or something and try to, poke at it and poke at the eye. If they're still alive, they're going to blink. It's going to move. But yeah, definitely don't use your firearm to poke the animal. If it is still alive and you are still seeing that movement, you want to make sure you wait and get a good, ethical shot to the organs again. You want to make sure you're set up again if you need to take a secondary shot or maybe a third shot. It could be a great shot into their vitals, especially for like an elk or some, probably even an oryx. Some of those bigger animals, they may take more than one shot to go down. They're very tough animals. They can make it through quite a bit. So, if you're walking up and you're still seeing it move, just be aware that you may have to place, another shot into the animal. Once you've verified that the animal is down, you don't see any reaction, they're not moving, it's dead. Then at that point, you would want to safely unload the firearm because you don't need it anymore, right? That part's done. You no longer need the firearm. You don't want to put the firearm down, start doing field dressing, and then when you get back, you forget whether or not you still have a round, in that gun. So you want to start making it a habit of, okay, animal's down, I don't need my firearm anymore. I'm going to go ahead and unload. I know it's unloaded so that as everything's happening, I don't forget that I've already unloaded it. So you want to make sure you go ahead and safely unload. You don't need it anymore. And then you need to tag it, right? So each state is going to be different on the regulations for tagging. Some states may have, just a carcass tag. Some have an antler tag. Some of them, you don't need to fill it out till later. Some of them, they want it done right there. Some you may have to notch out the date. Some may have to write in the date. Here in New Mexico, we have e-tagging if that's something you're interested in, where you would get on our app and you tag it through there. So just depending on whatever state you're in, make sure you're following the regulations for tagging that animal. All right. Game care supplies. So what do we need, right? What's the minimum of what I should have with me? Well, for sure you need some knives. I say I have knife there, but realistically, knives, you want to have, a couple of them. You want to make sure you have a sharpener because especially for elk, it's going to get dull really fast and it's going to get a lot harder. The duller the knife gets, the harder it's going to be for you to field dress. You want a nice sharp knife. So there may be times you have to take a break, sharpen up that knife, and then keep going. Game bags. So you can see there in my picture, I don't know if you can see my, let's see, where is, let me, oh, let's try that one. So you can see right here, like the game bags, these ones are antimicrobial. You want to make sure you have game bags or I think Jennifer, you said before you've used bed sheets. You want something that you can wrap the animal in and help keep flies off of it and dirt off of it. You definitely don't want to get flies. You don't want them, laying any eggs in your meat or anything like that. So you want to make sure you keep that meat as clean as possible. And game bags, nowadays they're made so well that they have them for, whatever you're going for. If you're going for big game, they have, extra large bags for moose, or if you're just going for something like a deer, they may have a smaller size. It's just a lot easier to use. So you want to make sure you have game bags, a small saw or hatchet. You may have to cut into some of the bone. You may have to, especially down at the bottom, you're going to have to break some bones apart there to field dress it out. So make sure you have a small saw or hatchet. I put on their plastic gloves. I find it easier for me just to throw on some gloves when I start doing the work. When I'm done, I take them off. My hands are clean. I feel like it also helps me hold the knife better. I feel like I have a better grip on it. It's not so slippery as me just doing my hand. So I like using plastic gloves, especially, like I said, if you have to take a break and resharpen, you just take the glove off. If you have another pair, throw it back on when you get going again. Rope or paracord. You can see right here I have my picture of my paracord. If you have a larger animal, and especially if you're by yourself, or if it's just in an area where it's not laying downhill to help you out, or it's just in an area where you're going to need some extra stability, you can help tie up a leg to a tree to help hold it, or spread it out for you. So if you are in an area where you don't really have anywhere to put your game bags, we'll get into that a little bit. You can always tie them up in the tree while you're continuing to do your work. That way they stay in the shade. So having some rope or paracord is a really good supply to have. Cooler and ice. So if you're not going to be headed back to town or your residence or anything like that anytime soon, you're headed back to camp, and it's going to be a day or so before you can actually get out. You want to make sure you have a place that you're going to be able to keep it cool. Is it completely necessary? Not all the times. There's going to be times in certain times of the year for hunts that it's going to be cold enough at night for it, but most of the time you're probably going to need to be able to put that meat on ice. Water, of course, you're going to need water to keep hydrated right in your hunt, but also you want to make sure you have just a little bit left over to help you clean up, or if you need to clean off any of the pieces of meat, you want to make sure you have a little bit of water with you. Plastic bags. For some, this can be handy if you want to lay it out so that you can work and have everything clean and you're not putting it in the dirt. I wouldn't recommend for wrapping the meat so much, because we're going to talk about heat and how we need the heat to be able to escape it. But what I like using for plastic bags is I will put the ice in my cooler, and then I'll put a layer, like a plastic bag layer, and then I'll put my meat on top of that. And that just helps it stay out of the water, but it's still getting cool from the ice. So it just depends, but I've found every once in a while, it's like, man, if we had a bag. And so sometimes plastic bags can come in handy. A rag or paper towel, again, you're going to get a little bit dirty, and it's just how it goes. But if you need to clean off a knife, let's say you, as we're talking about it, you accidentally puncture, some of the guts or something, you don't want to keep cutting your meat with that. So you want to make sure you have something that you can wipe and clean off your knife if you need to.
And can I add something to your slide?
Sure.
Helen reminded me, so thank you so much, Helen. Something that I like to use, especially if I'm close by my vehicle, is everybody has, well, mostly, unless you use the Tide Pods, but you have that leftover laundry detergent container, and it's got a little bit of soap that you just can't ever get out. So what I like to do is I will just fill that old or that empty laundry detergent container with water, and I take that with me on my hunts. And it is awesome to get especially some of the fat off of your knives. It's great to clean up your hands and any of your saws and equipment. Because the last thing I hate to do is, after I'm done field dressing and my knife and my saw, has just residual bone and tissue on it, to put it back in the sheath, because now I'm just putting my really dirty knife back into the scabbard with all that junk on it. So that laundry detergent helps really clean up following your field dressing. So it's just something that I'll just throw in the back of the vehicle, and then I'll pull it out when I need it. So thanks, Helen, for the reminder. I appreciate it.
I saw there in the chat about knives. So what I have pictured right here is actually from Outdoor Edge, and it's a game processing kit. you can see right here, this is actually a sharpener. So you would hold it kind of on your knuckle like that, and that's how you're sharpening it. You know, they have the saws right here. They have to spread. I've never really used them, but you can spread out the pelvis, right? Is that what those are? Yeah. Oh, she's on mute. But up here you've got, you know, 3 fixed blade knives. You know, I saw in there that you have the Havalons. So the Havalons do have like a disposable knife that you can take off, kind of like a razor blade that you can change. Some of those Havalons are folding type knives, but they have a good locking system to help hold them in place when they're open. So whatever knife you use, you know, you definitely want to make sure you have a good stable knife. You know, a fixed blade is always going to be open. It's not going to accidentally shut on you when you're using it. Those Havalon knives have, you know, a good lock on it. What you don't want is like a folding knife that doesn't have a lock on it, because as you're cutting, and you know, if you hit a part that takes a little bit extra oomph, and it might just cut, and it might flip close on you, and it could potentially cut you, or it could, you know, like I said, puncture the gut or something like that. So whatever knife you use, you want to make sure that it's a good sturdy handle knife that can make sure it stays locked open to use it, and not just you know, your normal folding knives that don't have those locks on them.
Megan, that one piece that you were talking about, I drew an arrow on it. That's to prop open the body cavity to help cool it. I've never used one before, but sometimes, especially right now, it's antelope season. If that cavity keeps closing, that is something that could be really helpful to help air circulate inside that cavity. And then, like Megan said, there's this particular game care kit has really everything that you need. It's got like a cup, I like smaller knives like this, because you can get in and you don't have to worry about a whole bunch of metal blade if you're trying to get in and get the internal organs out. So the first one is really good to do that. Then it's got a nice skinning knife right here, which is a long one. That one's good too if you're going to have to debone your animal. It's a good fillet knife. And this one right here is, if you guys just need one knife, the one in the middle is what I highly recommend. It's got a nice, reasonable size blade, plus it's got the additional gut hook, which I love. It's so great. It really helps you not to accidentally puncture the stomach and stuff. It's amazing. So if all you have budget for is one knife, get a sharpener and get the one in the middle.
Okay. And again, this is just like, I don't want to say bare minimum, but these are kind of the bare minimum of what you need. Everybody's different and what their styles are going to be like, what they prefer. You know, this is just what, you know, I think and what I usually have at minimum. You know, there's times where we'll get out there and it's like, oh, we forgot the saw. And it's like, okay, so you just got to work around that, you know, and you forget to repack gloves in from the last hunt, and I guess I'm getting dirty. So, you know, this is just kind of what I've experienced works best for me when we're out there, me and my family. So you could add in things, you know, we have, during our hunter ed classes, we talk about this, and for some people, they like to have the big long gloves, like a veterinarian type of gloves that can go all the way to right here, because they're like, I don't want to get dirty at all, and so they want to cover all the way to right here. That's fine. If that's what you want to wear, great. It's just going to be kind of a personal preferencing is what you feel like you need when you're out there. All right, so the importance of proper meat handling. Why is it important, right? Well, it's important because how you handle it can affect the quality of it, right? You want to make sure that we keep it clean. We don't want to, you know, introduce anything to it that could cause it to go bad for us. So you want to always make sure that as soon as possible, you want to begin field dressing. you find it, you know, you tag it, you take your pictures, you know, you want to get going as quickly as you can, especially if it might have taken you a while to maybe track it, or if it took you a while to get to it. You know, I talked about if, you know, it decided to go down into the canyon, which it could happen. A lot of animals are going to want to go downhill, right? They're, you know, if they've been shot, whether, you know, by rifle or bow or whatever, there's some distress there. So they want to make sure that they're using the least amount of energy possible. They're going to make their way downhill. Downhill also has water. They're going to think, okay, I need to get to water. So there, you may shoot, you know, high up on a ridge, and it may decide it's going to go down into the canyon. And it may take you, you know, an hour or two to get down into that canyon to find it. So as soon as you get through, you know, safely unloading and, you know, tagging and taking your pictures and all of that, you want to get going on field dressing it. You want to start getting all that heat out of the animal. Speaking of, 3 major factors that can cause meat spoilage: heat, moisture, and dirt. These 3 things are the biggest factors of what can cause an animal to go bad when you're field dressing it. Heat is going to be the #1 concern. If you can't already tell in the past 10 minutes of me talking how many times I keep mentioning heat, heat is the #1 concern, because bacteria will start to grow very quickly on it if it's not cooled properly. Moisture can also encourage bacteria growth. So I talked about, you know, if you accidentally do puncture the gut and you get some of that on the meat, you want to rinse it off. You don't want to drench it. You just want a little bit of water to clean it off, and that's it. You don't want too much water on your meat. Dirt can introduce bacteria. So I talked about making sure you have a decently clean area, you know, whether it's putting a couple bags down to put your knives on when you're moving the animal around, or whatever it is. You want to try to make sure to keep as much dirt out of it as possible. So to get that heat to start escaping, there's 2 different ways, really. If you're doing what we call like traditional field dressing, that's by removing the internal organs, right? That'll start to cool down the game immediately. It's going to get air flowing through that body cavity, and it's going to start bringing that temperature down of the animal. There's also another way that's really popular now, and pretty much unless it's just in an area that I really can't do it, I mostly do Gutless Method anymore for a lot of the big game. Gutless Method is just like it says, you're not doing anything with any of the internal organs. You're actually removing the hide and taking the meat off from that way. So by removing that hide, that's also going to start to encourage cooling. It's going to get airflow going to get that animal to start cooling down. So remember, heat, moisture, and dirt. Those are the biggest 3 things when you're starting to field dress that you want to make sure you don't let happen. Am I doing all right? Are there any questions or anything in there? Good? All right. It's hard to pay attention to both.
I have a question that just came in about removing the hide off of a big game animal like an elk when it's on the ground. Yes, they are very heavy.
Yeah, they are.
It can take, you know, 2 people to roll it over. So on that Gutless Method, essentially you just start on one side and you go up the legs, and you just essentially cape it out, and you're using that kind of as a tarp. And then once you've got that side caped out, then you roll it over, and then you do it on the other side. And, you know, that's basically the easiest way to do it on a big animal like an oryx or an elk.
So we'll go over it here in a little bit, and I we'll have a video to show how some of that looks, but
perfect.
But yeah, that's kind of where, you know, rope and stuff like that comes in handy, because there may be times you're going to have to tie onto a side and pull on a leg to try to maneuver it around, or yeah, they are very heavy. But yeah, we'll go over Gutless here in a few. All right, so what do I need to take though? What parts of the animal are I required to take? So here in New Mexico, anyone who takes Barbary sheep, bighorn sheep, deer, elk, ibex, oryx, pronghorn, or turkey must transport from the field the edible portions for human consumption. This is straight out of our big game rules and information booklet. The edible portions of the game animals include all 4 quarters, the back straps, tenderloins, and the neck meat. Hunters are not required to remove the rib cage or the organs of game mammals from the field. The edible portions of turkey include the breast, legs, and thigh meat. So, like I said, this is in New Mexico. Each state is going to be different. Just like each state's tagging requirements are different, each state is going to be different on what they consider, you know, edible portions or what needs to be taken from whatever animal you are hunting. So make sure you're checking if you go to any other states what they require from you. So what does all that mean, right? So it says you have to take all the quarters, all 4 quarters, which is pretty much shoulder, shank from the front, top and bottom round from the back. So 2 each side, right? See, 4 of them. Your back strap right there, your tenderloins, and the neck. Like it says, we're not requiring you to take the rib. A lot of people will work on that though. They'll take as much rib meat as they can. But that's not a requirement in New Mexico for those animals. What does that all look like in real life though, right? Let's see, can you guys still see my spotlighted little red light, kinda?
Yes.
All right. Maybe that way. Does that work? Little arrows. So here's your quarters. My guess would be these are the front quarters. These are your back quarters. Down here at the bottom, it's your back straps. Right here in the middle would be your tenderloins. And my guess is right here at the top would be your neck meat. Now, I have never taken neck meat and it looked that pretty and put together when I've field dressed. So whoever did this is amazing, because usually mine comes out in a lot smaller pieces and it doesn't look as pretty as that. I don't know about Jennifer or Tristana. Maybe they're a little bit better at it, but it doesn't ever look that pretty for me.
Mine's already in little chunks for the hamburger, so.
Yeah. But that would be what we consider edible portions for our big game. So if you've ever wondered what it actually looked like, that's what you're looking to get out of right there. All right, now for the part we're all here for, right? The field dressing part. So I'm calling this the traditional. This is where we are planning on, you know, removing the internal organs. You know, some of the reasons this may be good for smaller game, you know, they're not as daunting, you know, to field dress, and it's just going to be easier for some of the smaller game. If you are planning on eating any of the internal organs, you know, if you're planning on eating the liver or anything like that, you know, of course you want to take those out. My mom could never get me to eat any type of liver, so that's not my thing. So for me, that's why I said gutless usually is what I do. But if you're a person that likes to eat the internal organs, then of course traditional is going to be for you. Some say you can get more meat, right? Because you remove those internal organs, you can cut around and take a little bit of extra, especially from the ribs and things like that. So, you know, if you're really trying to take every single piece of it, then you know, traditional will work for you. This can also be easier if you're taking the animal out whole. So for some people, especially with like deer, especially if it's something like Coues deer, a little bit smaller, they may just do traditional, take out the internal organs, and just take, if they're close enough to get it into a truck and get it, you know, to a skinning barn, they may do that. You know, some people may do the same thing with antelope. It's so hot and they're not that far from maybe the ranch that they're at or whatever. They may just, you know, do traditional, get the guts out, load it in the truck, and then go hang it in a barn somewhere and work on it there. I usually don't do that. For some of our department functions, we have done that with cow elk, and let me tell you, it is not easy to get a cow elk into the back of a truck. it's possible, but it's not easy. And especially if you don't have a winch or anything to help you get it in there, pulling that whole animal out like that's pretty hard. All right, let's see. So I'm gonna play you a video, and it's gonna show you the traditional method. This one was done by us at Game and Fish, by our resident video personality. Jennifer went on a hunt with one of our hunter education students and helped her get, I believe it was a young lady that was on the hunt, get an antelope, and they actually filmed the whole thing. And so I'm gonna play that for you guys, and then we can go through any questions, and hopefully these are better than any videos you found so far. Let's see.
I apologize for the amateur videography right up front. Okay, so the most important thing to have, obviously, is sharp knives. And some of the ones that I recommend, obviously, are something that's not, I mean, you don't need a big Bowie knife to do this. You're in a tiny space. So a nice sharp knife. And then this one's pretty cool because it's got the gut hook. So when we get to that point, it has a guard here so you don't puncture the paunch.
Right. Yep.
So, so that's super important. But there's lots of different ways to field dress, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, it's just basically what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
But I'll just show you kind of the way that I was kind of taught, and if you want, you can go ahead and hold. I'll get it started, and then we'll get you into here. But I always like to start at the back end and cut around all the private parts back here, and that way when you get up to the point when you pull it out, it all comes out nice and easy. Now, proof of sex for you is going to be, since it's a doe, it's going to be her head, and since you're going to take her home for a skull mount, we don't have to worry about keeping these parts.
Alrighty.
Okay? And so then you'll start here, and we're going to pretty much go all the way up. And so you basically want to ream out the back end area and cut right through the pelvic bone here, and then we're going to zipper all the way up. So on this part, because remember all the guts are right there, you just barely want to cut through this just enough. See where we're starting to see the lining of the stomach?
Yeah.
And so what's really cool is you'll get this and see how it's zipping it?
Yeah.
I'll let you do that. Right there. There you go.
Alrighty.
There you go. So I made a little tiny incision there. And see, Adriana, so now I've got the paunch right here, and see how I'm pushing my hands down like this?
Yeah.
I'm going to push that down and come up like that. So I'm pushing that, and there's the diaphragm. So if you want, you can try that.
Remember what, that's the way they showed you.
Yeah. You can come right here too, whatever's easiest for you.
I'll move all the way so that you can.
Okay. Ooh. There we go. There we go. So right in there. Right there. And right to the sternum there. There. And you won't be able to go any further there. We'll get that with the saw. Cool. So we're going to set that one aside. And then go ahead and take this, and we're going to cut through all that muscle tissue.
Alrighty.
So the sternum's right there. So go ahead and cut through that a little bit. There you go. It's Okay. So what that was the air. So the diaphragm's back here.
Yeah.
And that's separating the heart and lungs from the rest of the cavity here.
Okay.
And so that was all the air coming out
Okay.
of that upper cavity. So go ahead and just keep going through that muscle, because then we're gonna saw through that, and you're gonna use quite a bit of pressure, and you're just gonna go right along the top here. Keep going all the way through that fat, because that'll bind up the saw there. And if you're all the way to the bone, let me know.
Yeah. That's
Okay. And I always like to use one of these saws with a guard,
Oh man, you made me get my new pants dirty.
because in that way you won't damage the paunch either.
Yeah.
So what you'll do is you're gonna do short strokes like that.
All right.
And you're gonna cut all the way through the sternum. So the next part now is, especially if you're doing this by yourself,
Yeah.
see the diaphragm? You're gonna need to cut that away. And so you take your knife and you go down along the inside of that diaphragm.
Yeah.
And you're cutting that away, because then here in a minute we should be able to pull everything out. But then just be mindful of the paunch there. But just cut. See, I'm pushing it away
Yeah.
with my one hand, and then I'm cutting that diaphragm away with my other hand. And then don't get too far deep in there, because your tenderloins are there. So I'll let you do the other side. Alrighty. And of course, the biggest thing with meat spoilage is heat. So we want to get this carcass cooled as fast as we can. So just pull, oops. So that's your lungs, little biology lesson here. You did your job, Adriana, by practicing at the range, because there is no heart left now. And then of course we got some of this still attached in there, but technically when all of that, it can pull right on out. And but because you did your job so well at the range, and a perfect one-shot kill to the heart, I didn't have much to grab onto to pull it all out. But see how it all just pulls right on out? And I didn't ream it out enough back here. Where's the saw? And then of course here, ooh, and you just cut through the pelvic bone. There's a really cool trick that I've seen, and I can't ever seem to duplicate it, but there is a couple, when the pelvic bone meets back here, meets like a little triangle, and if you can find that, then you just cut through those. You can actually do it with a knife. I've seen it done on elk, and then you don't have to cut through. Man. There we go.
Put your legs still hold it.
But because I reamed all that out too, then a lot of this should just pull right out. She's in really good condition. She's got a lot of body fat. A lot of body fat. This isn't the best. This isn't the best, but there we go. And then hold her up, and we're gonna drain her. And then your tenderloins are back there. So we rinse the carcass out to get it nice and cool. Put a little bit of water in there. You just want to make sure that a lot of that pooled up blood and bloodshot gets out. Carcass is nice and cool, so get back to the skinning shed and get that taken care of.
All right. So that just kind of gives you an idea of how to remove those internal organs. If you can tell, heat is a main concern. Even Jennifer said it in the video. That's just kind of give you an idea of how to remove those internal organs. And then when it comes time to actually taking, the quarters and stuff like that, the gutless kind of shows pretty good at how to start skinning that and being able to take those parts. So we'll watch a video about that here in a minute. Is there any questions on that? I haven't seen anything popped up. No? That looked tiring. It can be, yes. That was just, a pronghorn, that when you got something a lot bigger, yeah, it's gonna take you a while.
That's why Megan also mentioned that not only do you need water to maybe clean off some of your animal, it's also for you, especially in the warmer season hunts. Make sure you stay hydrated. I think she touched on that. But yeah, you can get hot and sweaty, and if you forget to drink, then just make sure you're staying hydrated through that process.
One thing that just dawned on me that I forgot in supplies, and it's pretty biggy, but I forgot, is a first aid kit. I didn't have that written in there. You're dealing with really sharp knives, and you're dealing with saws and even pieces of bone fragment. Cuts could happen, so you want to make sure you have your first aid kit. And sometimes that's where plastic gloves can come in handy, because if you do end up cutting yourself, you put a Band-Aid, you want to put plastic glove over it. You want to try to keep your wound as clean as possible. But yeah, you got to be super careful there, especially once you're really in that cavity and you're pushing down on the guts to try to separate out so you can make cuts. You can, definitely a slip of a hand could cause some damage. So first aid kit, don't forget that.
One thing I want to add too real quick to that is, we are really emphasizing to try to get that meat cool as quick as possible, but don't get in a hurry when you're field dressing, because that's when you end up inadvertently cutting yourself. So just take your time, be very mindful of your hand placement and what you're doing, because then sometimes if you feel like you've got to be rushed or you got to get in a hurry, then that's when accidents happen. So just take a break, slow the process down, and that will eliminate or reduce your risk of cutting yourself. So just take your time.
Okay, so what happens if you did get a gut shot? If the shot wasn't as good as you thought, or for whatever reason happens, it happens, right? There's times where you are going to get a gut shot. Again, you want to make sure as soon as you can, you want to field dress it. You want to get those internal organs out, because if it's gut shot, something's punctured, something's leaking, and that's more time that you don't want that exposure to your meat. Trim away as much as you can with a clean knife. Like I said, have a little bit of water, have a rag to clean the knife. That way, once you're done with that part and you start working on the rest of the animal, you don't still have a dirty knife. If you need to wash the cavity to remove contamination, dry it thoroughly with a dry cloth or paper towel. So you kind of saw in the video with Jennifer, they did put a little bit of water to clean some of that out. But again, they didn't drench it. They didn't let it soak in there. They just enough to kind of clean it out. Make sure you have the cavity open and propped open, so as you're working, you're still getting that circulation going through it. All right, so the gutless method, kind of like we talked about a little bit earlier, this could be good for larger animals that are harder to maneuver. Wherever they went down is where they went down, and you're not getting them out of that area. If you're alone, this might be a good option too, because you can see with the traditional there might be some movement there, you know, pulling on you know, the internal organs to pull them out while making sure that the animal's staying where it needs to stay. That could be really tricky if you're by yourself. Some say it could be quicker. I guess it's as quick as you get proficient at it. You know, for some people, I would say traditional might be quicker for them. If that's all they've known and that's all they've ever done, they could be pretty quick about it. So it just depends. But some people might say it's a little bit quicker. Some would say it's cleaner because you don't run that risk of puncturing any internal organs. So, but when you're working on the animal like that, there's always a chance for that. That can always happen if you go just a little bit too deep with a knife. So, but it can be a little bit cleaner. And if the animal was gut shot, if that could be a good way to, if you know it was a really bad shot and you know it's gonna kind of be messy, then gutless method could definitely be a lot better. Yep, like Jennifer said, it's the preferred method. If you're gonna have to pack that animal out, you're gonna need it in pieces. So you might as well start off with putting it in pieces instead of removing the organs. How are we doing on time? Doing good?
Yep, we've got 6:20, so if everybody's, you know, okay with going maybe a little over, then we can definitely accommodate one of these videos, unless people are having too much of an issue seeing videos, which seems to be what's kind of happening right now with people's internet connections.
Well, let's see, and then we can go with the Hunters Connect, and it gives them kind of just an idea of what it looks like, and then we can put this link for this other video. They're both showing you the gutless. One video is just giving a little bit more in depth to it, but at least the second video will give you an idea of what it looks like and what we're looking for. Let's see, let me pull that up. Anybody hear it? Good?
Yes.
Hey, welcome to Hunters Connect. Michael Parenti here just arrowed his first bull elk. In this video, we're going to show you how to cut up an elk. And this is just the way I do it. There are a ton of different ways to do it. We're going to use the gutless method. I don't gut elk because they're a very large animal. And usually they die in places that they're difficult to deal with. Just like this one, we're on a steep side hill. He's barely hung up right here. I think we got him in a position that he's going to stay. So one thing to have in your pack that's super helpful is some paracord, just to tie up a leg or antlers or whatever you need to do to work on it. We're not going to get super in depth in this video, but we're going to walk through the basic cuts and how you do it. There's really no better way to do it than to be with someone when they're doing it for the first time, but hopefully I can show Michael how this is done and he can get through this, and they'll give you some insights for when you actually have an elk on the ground. And so you're going to do one side at a time. So we're going to get the first front shoulder off and then the same side hind quarter off. And then we're going to get the back strap, the tenderloin, before we flip it and do the other side. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is we're going to make a dorsal cut, just right down the backbone. We're going to go all the way down to the base of the neck and then all the way to the hind quarter. So once we get the skin off that front shoulder, I'm not going to skin the hind quarter yet, just the front shoulder. Once I get that skin off, I'm going to continue to skin it all the way to the neck as well. But once I get all that skin off, we're going to peel the front shoulder off, and you just cut right along the brisket. And then just cut against all the rib bones and just fillet that meat. Fillet it across the ribs, all the way up. And then eventually, if you see the back strap, try not to hit the back strap, but just keep filleting, pull that leg off, and it'll separate, and you have your first quarter. Put that in a game bag, and then you're going to want to put it in shade, somewhere where it's breezy. Ideally, shade, cool spot, low spot, anywhere that's going to cool down quickly. After that, we're going to continue to fillet the neck meat off. Depending on what position the elk is in, sometimes you can do the whole neck roast in one go. A lot of times, I just do the same thing. I do just the one side, and then I'll flip it, and I'll get the other side. But we'll fillet all the neck meat off all the way to the base of the skull. Definitely check your want and waste laws in each state. I always take the meat regardless because it's really good meat. You can braise it, you can burger it, it's all sorts of stuff you can do. You don't have to keep it in all states, but I highly recommend it. Once we have the neck meat, if you missed any rib meat when you filleted your front shoulder off, now's the time to continue to fillet that rib meat off. You can get between the ribs. You can cut out the meat between the ribs. Get as much meat off of that as you can, and the brisket as well. Just all that rib plate you can trim off. From there, we're gonna peel back and skin the hindquarter. Once we have the hindquarter skinned, same thing, just skin it all the way around. Have someone hold it up ideally. And this is where it's a little tricky, and it's really hard to explain, but you have to cut against the pelvis, and it's very strangely shaped. Until you've done it, it's hard to know where to make these cuts. But if you continue to fillet, eventually you'll hit the hip joint. When you hit the hip joint, there's a little tendon in there, and you're gonna cut that and pop that. Once it's popped, then you can flip it back to the other side, come in from the top, and you cut down the top, just kind of right along the spine, fillet down along the pelvis, and eventually, it takes a little time. This is tricky, it's hard to do, but eventually you can separate that hindquarter, pull it off from the hip joint, put that in the game bag, hang it in the shade. Also in your state, make sure you check what the evidence of sex laws are. A lot of times you have to leave evidence of sex attached to a portion of meat. So we're gonna leave a testicle attached to this hindquarter when we skin it off. So you gotta be careful. Leave the skin attached and trim around the testicles or the penis, whatever the evidence of sex requirement is in your state. Trim around it and leave that naturally attached to the meat. From there, you take the back strap off. This is the most fun part for me. It's really easy once you have the quarters off. You can fillet right underneath, and then you fillet right along the backbone, and then it just comes off in this beautiful chunk of meat. So with the tenderloin's a little tricky, especially on the gutless method. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna press down on the guts, and as you're pressing down, you kind of start to fillet underneath the spine. So there's these or I don't even know what these bones are, but the bones that come out from the backbone, and you fillet right underneath them against the bones, and you can feel the tenderloin. If you feel in there, feel kind of where it's at. You fillet right along there, and you just have to work it out slowly. You can pull that out. From there, though, you flip the elk, and then you just repeat the process. Exact same thing over again. You're gonna have yourself a ton of really great, tasty meat. Well, this bull's all cut up. We got all the quarters off. We got all the strap meat off. The heart, the head separated. Everything's ready to go. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, let us know. If you have any other ideas or comments, questions that we can make videos on, let us know. But have a great hunting season.
So that was like a really quick example of what gutless is. The other link I have, which like Jennifer said, we'll put some of these links here in the chat. I think gives a little bit more detailed of how the gutless, and it's one that I like that I think explains it pretty good. But I can't remember, I don't know where in the comments I saw where it said just flip the elk, and it's like easier said than done. It can be, once you take off that one side, it does take some of the weight off, but really what's going to be the hard part is getting the head, and especially if it's a bull elk, is getting that rack to turn. But once you can kind of get the head turned and get that part in a position that'll help you when you flip it, the rest of it kind of just goes with it. It's still going to take a little bit, and that's where I'm talking about, okay, maybe you need some rope and you're tying, and you use that to help give you that leverage to pull it and flip it over. But yeah, it's going to take work. Like Jennifer said, you may have to take breaks. You may have to, get some water and get your strength back up to flip it back over. But you could see kind of in the video too, where the animal went down for them. There was no moving it from there. Even though it was on the steep part of that hill, that's where it was going to have to stay while they worked on it. So definitely going to be some work, especially with some of those bigger animals. You could see there how they used the hide, kind of as a like a clean area. As they flipped it down, you know, they were still able to keep the animal clean by flipping that hide down as they cut it. This is just the way they did it. I've seen some people who they will start with the cut down the back, and they will take the whole hide off on one side. He kind of cut it down the middle and just started working on that front shoulder, and then did the second half. I've seen some people cut the whole side down on the hide before they start working on the actual meat parts. So like he said in the video, it's going to be one of those things that's just kind of your preference once you get going with it. You can see there how quickly it was to kind of get the meat off for the parts that are considered edible. And the hardest part, I think, with gutless is going to be the tenderloins, because you could see there how he had to push down on the gut to kind of get underneath the spine there and get the tenderloin. So that's going to be an area where, you know, you're going to have to be careful not to puncture the organs, and you're also going to have to be careful with your hands. Sometimes, especially like that, you're almost kind of working blindly. You're just feeling for, you know, that tenderloin and having to make your cuts up against that spine. So that's definitely a spot you want to be careful when you're cutting, is when you're having to kind of do some of that blindly. In that video too, and I think it was a good example. I don't know if you noticed, one of the times the other guy was holding up a quarter and he was finishing cutting it. Be careful of your helper too. Don't accidentally cut them, because he was standing right there holding the quarter and his legs are kind of close to him. So be mindful of where you're at, but be mindful of where your partner's at too when you're doing that, because it doesn't take very much to you concentrating on cutting and you forget that your buddy's hand or leg or something might be right there. So just be careful with each other if you're working in a pair. I think Jennifer put up, I'm not sure which video she put up so this one was from ALK 101. It's a video that I found that I thought was a pretty good video. It goes a little bit more detailed. So if you want to check that one out as far as gutless. Like Jennifer said, there's videos all over YouTube that, you know, some of them do a better job than others of showing it. But that kind of gives you a quick example of what gutless method looks like.
One of the things I want to touch on, regardless if you're doing a traditional method or a gutless method, and you have a pretty good idea that you might want to bring your harvested animal home for some taxidermy. So one of the things you'll need to do, part of your hunt preparation, is talk to a taxidermist and ask them how to take care of that cape, or where should you start or stop your cuts when field dressing, because they need to have, especially for a shoulder mount, they need to have enough hide to where they come on the back side of that form to stretch it. You don't want to have it too short, because then they're not going to have enough to work with, and it's not going to come out as good as you had envisioned. So get with your taxidermist, ask them how they would recommend that you field dress, so you can leave enough hide there. And especially too, if some of you wanted to make a rug, if you have a bear hunt or an oryx or even a whitetail, they make some really pretty tanned hides or rugs. So get with that taxidermist as well, because the cuts are going to be quite a bit different. And actually the gutless method might work best if you're going to make a rug or tan a hide. So just be mindful of that, to reach out to a taxidermist beforehand.
Yep, I have a slide on that in a minute.
Oh, sorry.
Meat processing. Okay, so if you're gonna do this on your own, so we got all the meat back to your house, or you know, if you're, I don't think you'd be doing this at camp. Some people might want to debone right there. So you have it back to where you're going to work on. Some of the things you might need if you're going to do meat processing on your own is a good large clean surface, right? That's going to be a lot of meat that you're going to have to cut up right there. So make sure you have a good surface to do it. Again, sharp knives, you know, freezer butcher paper, freezer tape so that you can tape it up. If you don't have, I have vacuum sealer on there. That's really good to put the meat in the vacuum sealer and then cover it with freezer paper. If you don't have that, even just, you know, plastic bags help. That's just an extra layer of protection there. And I put marker because you want to make sure you know when you're getting it out of the freezer later what it is. And I've had lots of family members who are like, I think this is elk. And I'm like, well, why didn't you write on it? So a marker to put what it is, when it was processed, and so that you can kind of keep that rotation going and you're not left with this like mystery package not knowing what it is later. A tip that I think that that we use in my family is whenever we do a process on our own, there's always going to be bits and pieces left over, right? There's going to be stuff that we don't want to package up. We tend to throw it in a big bag and just freeze it, let it get frozen. And then if we're, you know, discarding it wherever it is, then that's when we go throw it out. If it's not going to be anytime soon that we can get it to where we can go discard it. Because if you just go throw it out like that, or you just throw it in the garage until you can get to the weekend when you can go discard it or whatever, it's not going to be a pleasant smell. So if you know you're not going to have the opportunity to discard it right away, I would freeze it. And then that way later on, you don't have that smell all over the place. So what, email supplement. Oh yeah, so on field dressing, yeah, definitely. So it may be nighttime, and that's a whole other level of thought process on making sure you're being careful with where you're placing your knife and what all your equipment is, and kind of getting yourself prepared before you start. That way it's not, you know, like, oh, okay, where did I put my knife down? Where did we put the saw? I can't see, you know, my headlamp's giving out, the battery's going out, or whatever it is. You make sure you want to, have extra batteries, but make sure you're prepared. Make sure before you get going, you have everything you need and you kind of know where it's all going to be at. So if you decide you're not going to do it on your own and you are going to take it into a place to get processed, you know, I would say, I have it down at the bottom, but the tip would be at the beginning, kind of check with the processor that you want to go to and make sure that they will take game meat. Most meat processors will take game meat, but they may only take it on certain days because they have their own set of guidelines as far as keeping their equipment clean and sanitized compared to when they're working on, you know, beef or anything like that. So just wherever you think you're going to take it, if you know, you hear a place from someone, call, make sure that they take it. And if they have any specifics on, you know, when you can bring it in or anything like that. Price is going to vary from a processor to processor, or the region that you're in, the area that you're in. It's going to vary, and it's going to be based on what you bring in most of the time. So if you bring in the quarters and everything like that, they're going to weigh it and they're going to give you a price based on it being considered bone in. So just be kind of mindful of that. They're going to ask you, what do you want? When you go, kind of have an idea of what you're going to want back from them. You know, because they can do anything from grounding it up and giving you burger. They can cut you roast. They can cut steaks. You know, like jerky, then they can have it cut to jerky. Some of them are even more specialized of doing sausage or like sausage sticks. So just have an idea of what you want, because they're going to ask you. I mean, if you tell them, I want 50 pounds of burger and I want this many pounds of roast, they're going to say, okay. You know, if you just tell them, well, you know, it doesn't matter. No, they're going to want to know kind of how much you want of everything. They're probably going to ask you too if you want to add any fat in. Game meat is lean. That's why so many people like it. That's why so many people, you know, they enjoy it, is because it is a lean meat. But if you're doing something like sausage or something like that, you're going to need that fat in it to make it come together. So they're going to ask you that if you want to add fat to any of your burger or anything like that. So some processors, depending on how big their establishment is, they may ask you to leave the cooler that you're bringing it in. And this is because once they're done with it, they're going to throw it back in that cooler. They're going to throw it in their walk-in, and it's going to be your order altogether right there. So some of them may ask you to leave the cooler that you brought it in. When you get it back is going to kind of depend on the processor. It's going to depend on the time of year. You know, if it's right in the middle, you know, late October, November, where they've got all kinds of different hunts going on and all kinds of people coming in, it may take a while. It could take, you know, 1 to 2 weeks or more, depending on how busy they are. If they're the only processor in that area for a good distance, it might take a while. So just be prepared for that one. A lot of them will have you leave your license or your carcass tag on it, or they're going to want a copy of it, or they're going to want some documentation with it in case something happens and, you know, the local game warden there has to go check out, you know, what's there. Maybe they're there for some other reason, but they want to make sure that they have all of their documentation with each animal that they get in. So just be prepared if they ask for that. Like I said, and it could vary on prices. Let's see. Is it true that processors sometimes make your meat with other people's meat? Someone told me, and I have been hesitant ever since.
I did just address that,
okay.
and it does occur. And that's just something you'll want to talk to the processor about to see if they combine deer with deer. They're not going to take elk meat and combine it with deer, but there is a chance that they just get a whole bunch of deer in all at the same time, and they just know that your carcass weight is X amount of pounds that needs to go back to you, and that's what you're going to get back. You're going to get X amount of steaks and whatever, and it's not always a typical practice, but the big processing places can do that. So definitely ask that, because if they do that and they mix meat, somebody else might not take care of the meat like you do, and then you wonder why your steak you're eating tastes really gamey. Well, it probably wasn't your meat. So and yeah, somebody put a really good comment in there that like Wildlife West, they have in the past taken discarded meat or parts that you don't know what to do with, but call them first and ask them, and if they can accept it, and then you can give them a donation certificate for those pieces of meat or whatever's left over.
Right. So like Jennifer kind of went through, if you do plan on getting any taxidermy work, contact them before. There's going to be certain things that they need for you. Like Jennifer said, you know, they're going to need some of that extra hide if they're doing mounts, you know, especially when it comes to, you know, full body mounts and things like that. They need every bit of that hide. So make sure that you contact a taxidermist beforehand, and they can kind of walk you through what they need. You know, especially for animals that you don't typically see a lot of information on, like Jennifer said, with bear or things like that. Especially when it comes, I think, to waterfowl and turkey, those ones can be pretty tricky. So definitely, you know, check with them of what they need or what from you. So I have some videos links here. The Gutless Method video that we watched is from Hunters Connect. It's through the IHEA, which is International Hunter Education Association. They put a bunch of videos out, and they're really good videos. So you can look them up on YouTube. They're called Hunters Connect. And they have a lot of good videos on, you know, if you want to learn how to debone a shoulder, or, you know, if you want to get a little bit more in depth with meat processing, there's videos there. They have a good video on field processing a turkey. They have one that's really good about talking about how to keep your meat cool if you're in the backcountry. So if you're hiking into the wilderness and you get your animal, but you're not hiking out right away for whatever reason, they talk about how do you keep that meat cool when you don't have the cooler and ice right there. So those Hunters Connect, they have a lot of good videos. Oops. Put some over here. I think I can get some of those put for you guys. Let's see. I don't know how it's gonna pop up here, but I'll try it.
Hey, Megan, I can download the list of people who attended tonight and send it to you, and we can email that out to them. I know I always have a hard time copying out of the chat, so if that works for you, I'll send you that list.
Okay. So let's see. So that's all I have as far as field dressing and processing. I know it was a quick kind of introduction to it. Like a lot of the videos have said, and a lot of times we have said, so you're out there doing those cuts, there's nothing that's going to show you exactly how to do it. Like I said, even at the beginning of the thing, I forget, we all forget. If it's been a while, you get out there and it takes a minute to be like, okay, what do I need to do? And even when you're doing it, you're like, you always think, did I forget a step, or did I make this cut right? It's just one of those things that's going to take practice for sure. Any questions? Tristana, Jennifer, anything?
We were getting most of them as we were going through the presentation. I'll give it a minute or so in case anybody does have something that they'd like to ask at all. We did have a few folks reach out to us ahead of time, and I wanted to make sure that I addressed their questions. I believe Alice was interested in connecting with other ladies who enjoy to hunt. And that's what we're trying to do with this platform, is to get you ladies connected with others who are also interested in the same thing with the outdoors, whether it's hunting, fishing, camping. This is a great place to meet other women who enjoy and are passionate about the outdoors. And so if, you guys can definitely, hopefully, connect with other ladies in this platform. I think a few folks have gone fishing together based on meeting on this platform and have met outside of this. So we're really hoping that that's what this environment is encouraging everybody to do, is to build on a social network of other women who are out there of different skill levels and interests, to get everybody out there and enjoy the outdoors, hunting and fishing. So hopefully we can continue to foster that environment for you. And then I believe Buffy had a question in regards to field dressing bear. I highly recommend doing the gutless method on a bear. I did try to do some research on some YouTube that was out there, and I wasn't really impressed in a lot of the video links that I watched, so I am not going to really endorse any of them. But I do encourage you to go and look at some. But basically, if you're going to field dress a bear, just definitely do a gutless method. It's a lot better that way. And then, of course, if you do get a nice bear and you want to do some taxidermy on that, there's so many different ways on that hide for a really pretty rug. So definitely get with a taxidermist on that, because there's only so much they can do to make it look good. So if you mess up too many cuts on that hide. So, and for those folks who are inquiring about bear, you can eat the meat. It's good. I harvested a bear several years ago, and I wish I would have brought more of the meat out. However, you do need to be very, very careful with bear meat. You have to cook it very thoroughly and to recommended temperatures, just because of trichinosis. So it's something you really have to be very watchful for on bear meat. But I've had it, it's very good. And when you are field dressing a bear, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of spooky when you're field dressing. It kind of looks a little weird. So, but other than that, it's a good experience, and it's good meat. So I think Sarah has a question. Can you unmute yourself, Sarah? I think we have Sarah Berger. I see your hands up. I'm not sure. Let's see if let's see, I've selected ask to unmute. I'm not sure if you can unmute yourself or not, Sarah. might be having some trouble. So I'm not sure if this group is ever going to get to meet in person. Everybody's from so many different areas of the state, so it'd be actually kind of difficult for us to travel all around, because we literally have people from Silver City or Las Vegas, Farmington, Carlsbad, Las Cruces, which is awesome about a virtual platform. But one thing that we're hopeful for, if and whenever we're able to return to in person, is in the past we have offered ladies camp opportunities where we actually talk about these skills, try to actually give you hands-on and stuff like that. So hopefully we'll be able to do some stuff like that in the future.
Jennifer, if I can just jump in really quick. There's a few questions on in the chat, and so Kayleen had mentioned she has a page out there that's New Mexico Women's Hunter, which sounds really cool. I just Googled it. It was super easy to find searching Kayleen's name, so she popped right up for me on our Facebook feed. We will be adding the traditional the traditional field dressing video into this video. I'll be clipping it in so that we can get it posted on our YouTube feed, and we will do our best to get that posted as soon as possible. I think that was the only questions that you hadn't addressed so far. So yes, the other question I saw earlier on, Jennifer, was when is the next one?
She muted herself.
Ah, there we go. The infamous phrase, you're on mute. So Bernadette, it looks like she had some questions in regards to, I'm sorry, it was Kelly. She has her first hunt in 16B. I think Megan has a little bit of some insight in that, or we can get you in touch with the conservation officer, Kelly. So we can reach out to you maybe outside of this, so we can get you some information on that unit. I'm assuming it's for elk.
Yeah, and this was primarily geared for big game. You know, there's all kinds of different things as far as field dressing. I myself don't have that much experience when it comes to waterfowl or anything like that. So, you know, definitely, you know, it's going to be having to do a little bit of research if you're, you know, going to be hunting one of those species that's not, you know, what everybody usually goes for as far as big game. You know, I can say that when I went hunting javelina, that one was an experience, because I had really never even been around javelina, much less having to field dress one. And their smell is very, very unique. So you kind of have to be prepared for that, which I wasn't. But yeah, so hopefully if you do any other species, you know, it's going to be a little bit of research and how to do that. But we can always try to help find someone that might know a little bit more than us on that.
Yes, most definitely. Javelina have they have scent glands on their back end, and you don't want to touch it, and you don't want to get your knife in it. So it's bad news. But the meat's good. It doesn't make very much. It'll fit in a crock pot. Wonderful questions.
I don't see anything else.
No, and Kelly did confirm it is for an elk hunt in 16B, so we could probably reach out to you, Kelly, and help you out with that and our contact information. Alicia, she has a question. Do you want to unmute yourself? I'm not, or yeah, there you are.
Hi.
Oh.
It's not necessarily about processing, but I was wondering, what kind of things do you guys do to help yourself with your bow hunts? Because I'm trying to get myself to that draw weight that I need, and I'm not quite there. And so I'm wondering what you guys do to kind of get that strength to be able to get a higher draw weight.
That's an awesome question. I'm preparing. I'm preparing for my archery deer hunt here in a few weeks, so it's right around the corner. And muscle memory is key. If you can get out and shoot as much as you can, that's what I highly recommend. But of course, sometimes the weather doesn't always cooperate, or we don't live in areas that are conducive to shooting in your backyard. So some of the things I like to do is just work on just what I like to call isometric muscle movement of your shoulders, and your back, your upper back muscles, because that's essentially where you're going to be drawing your string back, your bow from, is actually your back and your shoulders. And so strengthen those muscles that are along your shoulder blades. That will help with increasing your poundage. And then what I like to try to do too is on days where I'm not focusing on just shooting, at a specific spot on my target, I am just literally pulling my bow back and holding, and then releasing to build endurance. Because again, you might have to hold that shot for more than just about 10 seconds. And so if you can build up that muscle endurance to hold that as well, is what I like to try to work on. It's not always just a pull the string back, get it to where you need it, and then release right away. It's a pull and hold. And then just really focus on pulling and drawing your upper back and shoulder muscles back. And I just have done some YouTube stuff on how to just do some light weights and stuff to help strengthen just my upper arms and my upper back to help me with that. And don't kill yourself over a specific draw weight. Again, it does depend upon what you're hunting, but shot placement is everything. And so properly, I pull sometimes between 45 and 50 pounds. It just depends upon where I'm at in my, where I'm at. So don't stress out that, oh my gosh, I'm not at X weight and I'm not going to be able to effectively shoot this animal. So you might have to be at closer distances. If you are in that smaller poundage range on a bigger animal, then your maximum effective range might be at a closer distance. Instead of maybe 50 yards, you're going to have to go closer. So, but so those kind of factors play in, but it's all about shot placement and waiting for that nice quartering away or broadside shot on that animal to slip that broadhead right into that vital spot. So hopefully that helps you out. Sorry, that was a little long-winded.
Megan, it looked like you were looking, or Jennifer, do you know what the minimum draw weight is for hunting elk? Is there a legal poundage? No.
There is not here in New Mexico. Other states have a minimum poundage, so it's definitely good to look into that, but we do not have that here. Anything else? You guys have been awesome. Thank you so much for all the continued support. We wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you. Well, me and Megan and Tristana would just be talking to one another. So we really appreciate you guys continuing to support this platform, and especially all the new ones out there that have joined us this evening. Thank you so much for the compliments and all the wonderful posts in the chat. That's very kind, and we appreciate your words. And so
many first timers too, so thank you and good luck, and we hope you enjoy. That's awesome that so many in the chat says it's going to be their first hunt, whether in general or for that animal. So congratulations, good luck.
Yeah, definitely good luck to everybody who is going afield this season. There is one question that just came through from Rhonda about knowing where the aim point is for an effective kill. And it's in that heart lung area right behind the front shoulder. So if you look up at a picture of a deer, you'll go right up that front leg to where the arm meets the body. You go up a little ways and there's kind of like a little armpit right there. That's effectively where the heart's going to sit. And then the lungs, of course, are right behind, above, and a little bit below, and towards that, as you move back on the body of the animal. So it's about the size of a paper plate on a big game animal. So if you get everybody kind of has a picture in their mind of what a paper plate looks like, that's about the size of a big game animal. So if you're bow hunting or you're rifle hunting, if you can get your shot within that paper plate, you've hit the vitals of a big game animal. Great question.
I just
Fantastic.
have something to ask real quick. When you were talking about the draw weight, I know there's not like a legal limit here in New Mexico, but I know that there's like the minimum that can like penetrate like an elk hide. Do you guys know anything about that? Like what the minimum might be?
No, there's
'Cause
so
I'm
many.
between 35 and 40 pounds right now, but I know you said, like you said, the shot placement, but I know if it's not quite right, it might not be strong enough to penetrate deep enough. So I was just wondering if you guys knew something about that.
So that I don't know a whole lot about. The big factor in regards to that, it does have to do a little bit with your draw weight or your poundage that you're pulling, but your broadheads need to be very effective. So you're going to need to have probably a heavier grain broadhead potentially with more cutting points. So like a three blade, fixed blade broadhead for an elk. They do also make the mechanical broadheads that are two-bladed, and some people find those highly effective as well, but I don't know really what their poundage is. So I would really then focus on, if you're between 35 and 40 pounds, is trying to, shoot in a closer distance. Focus on that penetration to the heart and lung areas, and just make sure that your broadhead is maybe, I shoot 100 grain broadheads. But an 85 to 100 grain broadhead should work for that. So, and I recommend too, maybe talking to an archery shop as well. They can definitely give you some better pointers than I could when it comes to that. That's a great question. Well, I think everybody's probably ready for Taco Tuesday. It's smelling like tacos in my house. And so it smells amazing. And I think it might even be deer. So that's super exciting. But again, if you guys ever have any questions that come up after the fact, and this has been marinating in your mind, and then something comes up, you're like, oh, that was such a great question. Why didn't I ask? Write down our contact information. It's in the chat. Call us, text us, email us. We'd love to hear from you. We're here to support you. So if something comes up later on, or you're fixing to leave for your hunt and you're like, oh, I didn't even think about this, call us, reach out to us. We're here to support you. And we're thinking the next social hour is going to be, let me pull up my calendar. Tristana, Megan, what were we talking about? September 21st?
22nd, I believe.
21st is a Tuesday.
The 21st then.
Yeah. So 21st, and we're kind of thinking about, since so many of you are wondering about how to connect with others to get out and about, we're thinking about gathering up ladies or groups from the industry that can come and talk about their group and how you guys can get connected with them for hunts, for shoots, for outdoor experiences. Because as of now, Game and Fish, we're not able to offer anything at this point, and we're not really too sure when, but some of these other groups have the ability to host things like the Women in the Outdoors. The Turkey Federation just had a weekend down in Sacramento this last weekend. So there's stuff going on out there that we would love for you guys to get in touch with. And so I think what we're going to do is have different groups come and provide you guys information of how you can connect socially with other women to start building those relationships and learning experiences outdoors for the, those hands-on types of things that we can't really do through this type of environment. So hopefully you guys can join us on that day and connect with other women that are out there that are actively doing things and getting you on board so you can start building relationships and sharing experiences as well. But with that, I think we've addressed all the questions. So everybody have a wonderful evening. Good luck on your hunts. If you're not going hunting, enjoy the outdoors. And Megan, Tristan, anything else?
No.
Good luck.
All right, everybody have a great evening. Goodbye.